Back on the Young Turks. Now we want to talk to an interesting guest, Charles Goyette. He's the author of The Dollar Meltdown. We'll talk to him a little bit about policy that's leading to, and of course, in his estimation, the meltdown of the dollar. Charles, welcome to the Young Turks.
Yeah, good pleasure to be on your show, Jake. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for taking the time to do it. So tell us why you think the dollar is melting down first.
Well, I suppose the real basic, I mean, just to cut right to the chase, is the dollar is a piece of paper produced at the cost of paper and ink. And one great economist once said that all paper currencies eventually return to their intrinsic value, which is just that. You know, I mean, paper is very useful, but you slap a little ink on it and you can't use it for what you used to be able to use it for. So this is the fact that there's a currency crisis in development with U.S. dollar should be really nothing new. I mean, these things have happened all over the world, time after time after time, and it usually follows a very similar template to that of the United States government. Look, we are indebted in a way that is barely comprehensible. If you look at, for example, Richard Fisher is the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. He said, let me tell you what the real numbers are. If you want to know the promises that people rely upon, the things that they have been told, medical care and retirement, Social Security, and so on, all of these payments that people depend upon as they plan their future, their lives. If you look at the funding, how much money it would take to meet those obligations beyond what's already scheduled to be taxed, beyond the deductibles for medical and so on, you're talking about $99.2 trillion. He says that works out to $1.3 million for an American family of four. Well, for crying out loud, the median household income in America is only $50,000. So it does not compute, and that is the basic
Wait, Charles,
outline.
you got to go back.
All right.
Okay, what are you claiming is $92 trillion?
Well, it's not me. It's Richard Fisher, the president of the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank. He says that the infinite horizon unfunded liabilities of the United States, if you had to sequester the money to meet the shortfall, besides what is already scheduled to be taxed as we move forward into the future, to meet the shortfall in obligations upon which that the government has made to people, upon which they rely.
Right, I got you. But the problem is there that uses an infinite horizon, which is, you know, yeah, but you're comparing apples and oranges. You're looking at an infinite horizon, which is the cost of of those outlays for the rest of time, with the current salary that Americans make of $50,000 a year. Right. So that's a little different. Now, I'm concerned about the deficit too, but I want to give the people a sense of what we're talking about here.
All right.
Okay, so now, when you look at the short term, though, people say the dollar is actually fairly healthy. Dubai melts down, and people rush back into the dollar. One of the top currency traders who actually thinks that shares some of the thoughts that you do and thinks gold is the best bet over the next decade or so, says in the short term, the dollar is the right play because when other currencies are in trouble, the dollar still looks stable and safe. How do you respond to that?
Well, look, there's no question that in the meltdown of last year, people said, here, we don't give our money to Bernie Madoff's hedge fund. We don't care if you bury it in the lawn at the White House, put it in aluminum foil and wrap it, throw it in the freezer or something, but return it to us intact at some point down the road. So there is that. There is the printing press. The U.S. Federal Reserve's ability to create money out of thin air becomes at some point, for some people, actually a point of comfort, that even if the United States spends itself into bankruptcy, they will print fresh new money to pay me back. But every time there's an event like the Dubai event, there's still massive leverage in the financial world. And every now and then some of it starts to teeter. And then the financial world holds its breath. And like Californians in an earthquake, they wait to see if this is the big one. Well, the world of debt is much, much bigger than just the little Dubai tip of the iceberg. Commercial real estate debt here in the United States has almost $3.5 trillion of U.S. bank exposure. But the biggest debtor of all remains the United States government, and we are dependent upon the kindness of strangers to keep that debt serviced.
But that's not exactly right. We're talking to Charles Goyette. He's the author of The Dollar Meltdown. Now, you say, look, people have some, semblance of safety and security with the U.S. dollar because we could print more, but savvy investors know better than that. If you overprint the currency, obviously it's going to lose its value.
Well, it has lost value. Cenk, wait a minute. The United States dollar has lost 20% of its purchasing power in the last 8 years.
20% over the last 8 years.
If you're comparing it to all other precious or all other paper currencies that are likewise irredeemable, it may look like it bobs up or down at any given time. But the ultimate purchasing power of the United States dollar has been destroyed. It has lost 96% of its purchasing power since the Federal Reserve was created.
Well, now, again, that's when you go back to the creation of the Federal Reserve. That's a long time
period,
and it depends on how you count.
Understand.
Okay, no, hold on. But what I wanted to get to is, right now the U.S. borrows at a 3.3% rate, which is a very, very reasonable rate. Honestly, I'm surprised.
The U.S. what is?
The U.S. borrows money from other countries, China, et cetera, and from its own citizens at a 3.3% interest rate, which is a very, very reasonable interest rate. And honestly, I'm surprised it's that low. But how do you explain, savvy investors throughout the world thinking that the dollar is stable enough and safe enough that they only pay 3.3, or they only require 3.3% interest rate on it?
Well, I mean, the idea of understanding the coming currency crisis isn't to understand what the price is today. You're right. I mean, the 30-year bond is 4.2% or something like that. But you don't need a weatherman to tell you whether it's raining or not. You simply go outside. You need a weatherman to tell you what's coming in the future. And what I'm trying to describe to you is that we are dependent. Look, it is a myth to believe that we, some of the richest people in the world, can depend upon some of the poorest people in the world to continually fund our spending. It cannot go on forever. And if something cannot go on forever, Jink, it will end.
I hear you on that, and that's why I'm concerned about it. And George Will and Paul Krugman got into a little debate over it on this week, over the weekend. And, George Will says, look, we got $700 billion that we've got to pay off, and where's that money going to come from? I mean, there's numbers thrown back and forth that are overwhelming, right? And on the show, I've broken down the amount of money we owe per person right now, and it's an astounding number. Now, having said that, Krugman says, hey, wait a minute, as a percentage of GDP, it's the same place we were at in 1992. So why is everybody's hair on fire now?
Well, I could answer that for you if you'd like.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. A percentage of GDP begins to become irrelevant if you look back to when we have had a greater debt as a percentage of GDP, for example, after World War II. You discover that the United States was the world's manufacturing hegemon. The United States was a creditor nation, not a debtor nation. The American people were massive savers. Now we have to learn from the Chinese how to save. So all things aren't equal. The United States ran trade surpluses then. Now the United States runs trade deficits year after year after year, and the American people are the ones who will be victimized by this currency crisis, and they do not know how to protect themselves and their families and how to profit from these events. Oh, the central banks of the world know how to do it. You see the spectacle of India the other day taking down 200 metric tons of gold in one fell swoop for dollars because they can read the dollar's future. It's the American people, like fish swimming in the sea, that don't know what this water substance is, what this monetary environment is all around us. But the rich and the powerful and the central bankers of the world know what's going on.
All right. Now, we could argue about whether we had a trade surplus in 92 or not, but overall, I see what you're saying, and generally I agree with the fact that these deficits are out of control. And I should clarify the George Will number. He said we're going to be spending in 10 years $700 billion a year just to service our debt. And I'm overwhelmed by a number like that. And I know that the times have changed. And so sometimes I look at Krugman's arguments and think, well, it's not exactly on point because, again, he's comparing apples and oranges a little bit there. But then we get to the question, and we have very little time for this, unfortunately, but Charles, what do you do about it? Now, it's easy to say cut spending, but taxes are at an all-time low. Shouldn't we raise some taxes to make up for some of that revenue?
I mean, go ahead and do it if you want, but there goes your housing recovery, there goes automobile sales. Look, the American people are getting slammed on credit card interest rates. You raise taxes on them, they're going to be slammed a little bit more. The economy has been a strong boy over these years, but you can't just keep loading bricks on it. But my point is larger than that, we have crossed the Rubicon. It cannot be solved. You would have to take 97% of all the discretionary spending in America by the federal government, all of it, virtually everything it spends to try to get a handle on the debt. The debt is compounding, and compound interest is the worst enemy of a debtor like the United States. So people have to learn how they can insulate themselves from this coming currency calamity.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. So in order to find that out, you go to the Dollar Meltdown, the book by Charles Goyette. Charles, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Jake, good to talk to you.
All right, we'll be right back. Young Turks.